I wanted to make a quick tutorial video for family history. Here is an example tree, and I want to go through and just show you the basics of how to navigate the Family Tree app and what certain icons mean and certain work that can be performed. So right here we have James Martin Allred Jr. as the main person of the tree we're viewing. And then we have his descendants below. These are all his children. And then we have his dad, his mom, and their individual lines as well. So for this example, when doing family history, one of the easiest ways to find names, records, duplication work, etc., is you will need a person that is born usually in the early 1700s. This top person was born in 1806. That's generally not old enough. So we're going to click on this arrow and load his descendants. So right here, you'll notice already that there are some yellow temple icons. Yellow temples mean that there is some further work that needs to be performed before the ordinance is ready to be completed. Usually this means they either are missing a date, a place, or there's something wrong with their name, such as they have a last name and a title, such as senior, junior, Mr., Mrs., but no first name. In cases like that, it's easiest just to delete the title because records do not need a first name to be baptized. They need a first or a last name as well as a date and place. That's it. For this example, we're going to click into George Heskett, and as you'll note, he was born in 1729. I try to find someone who is born before 1750, but after 1650, just because these are the records that have the most information and a long enough descendancy to be able to be helpful. So this is what a basic person's information looks like. We have their name, the date of birth, and you'll notice there is a 7-digit code. Everybody on Family History has a 7-digit code, and this is how you can identify them when doing their work, because I'm sure there's several George Hesketts in the world, and so we want to make sure that we're doing the right one. Then you'll notice it'll have his name, his birth, and his death if there is one. There might be some notes. It'll also have a spouse icon, and that'll have his spouse and his children. A parents icon, his parents and their children. It'll also have sources. These are records with his name on it. So this first one is births and christenings. And then that second one, I'm not exactly sure what kind of a date it is. Here you may find memories, or you can even add memories that you have had of your past relatives. This is extremely amazing because this can go live and then any of your other relatives can see it. You can also have it set to private so that only you can view it. But to me, it's so much fun to read other people's stories that they had with my great-grandparents, etc. And you do that by pushing this little plus button in the bottom corner, and then it'll say you can add a photo, add audio, write a story, or add a document. Unfortunately, as of right now, you can't add video to the Family History app. I hope that changes soon. Then on the end, this is the most important section, is their ordinance work. So this is when their ordinances were performed. It says that this last one hasn't been performed yet, but it's actually a glitch, and it just so happens that this person's record has been done. But anyway, so what we're going to mostly focus on is when you are doing family history, the easiest, fastest, and best way to do it is by clicking into someone, like I said, that is born in the early 1700s, hopefully before 1750, but before 1650, around there. And you'll click into them just like I clicked into George Heskett. And in the top corner, there are these 3 dots. Now, when you click on this, there's several different options. I'm going to hurry and go through them. View my relationship. This will just show you how you're related. You can search records with this person's name on it. Possible duplicates. This is if there might be other people's names that match or dates, things like that. And oftentimes, if a temple is yellow, it's because there are possible duplicates, and you can click on this icon. Or when you click on the yellow temple, it'll also just automatically have a button where you can push view duplicates as well. Now, descendants with tasks. This is the most important icon, and we're going to come back to it. View this tree. That just means you can view the tree from this person's perspective instead of your own. Then there's a more icon. It says share person. In case you found some cool insight or you wanted some help, you can share it with a family member. Or in this case, you could always send it to me if you have questions. Refresh the person. Oftentimes, if you had to change something like the date, their name, and it's not working to where it'll let you do the record. For example, say they had no date or place and you added one, but then it's still saying, hey, this person needs a date or place. Often, if you push refresh this person, that will help. The follow button. This is in case you want to follow this person's journey. So for example, if you turn in their records into the temple and you want to know when they get completed, you can hit follow and then it'll send you a little message when it's done. You can download the memories. So for example, if you had a really cool memory and you wanted to put it in your own journal or your own records, you can download that. Recent changes. This is extremely helpful if you're trying to find certain information or if something got deleted, you can see what it was. Delete person. Now, it does have this icon, but unless you were the person who created the person and you did it by accident, which I have done before, never delete a person, even if you think there's a reason for it. Oftentimes, it can mess up other things. Oftentimes, there's another record with their name on it, but it hasn't been connected. So when they find that, they'll recreate the person and it'll just create a big mess. So please don't ever delete people. And if you ever have a question, send me a message. Okay, we're going to go back to this section and descendants with tasks. This is what I use 99% of the time when I'm in the Family History app. When you click on this, this is a new feature and it's absolutely amazing. So you're going to see a couple of things, and depending on if you have an iPhone or an Android, mine's an iPhone, so it's a little bit easier, but not by much. Things might just be in slightly different places. So you're going to see his name, and then up at the top, you're going to see descendants with tasks. Now, by clicking that, we have found 237 descendants of this one person that need work done. That doesn't necessarily mean temple names, but a huge portion of them will be temple names. Now you'll see a little arrow that says either 3, 4, or 5 generations. You always want to click this and then hit 5 generations. That basically just means it's going to search his descendancy for 5 generations. For example, if I only hit 3 generations, that's only his kids, and his kids' kids, if that makes sense. So there's only 4. So we went from 237 to just 4. Now right here, there are some that do need done, but not very many. So we're going to go back to 5 generations. All right. So then at the top, sometimes you have to, so if you're, normally when you go into it, it'll look like this, but then if you slide down, it'll show these. So depending on what kind of work you're doing, I always clicked all because I do all types of family history work. But for beginners, we're going to focus just on finding temple names because that's the majority of what people do, and it's the most helpful. And then it's also the most fun because then you can take your ancestors' names to the temple. So if you click temple, it will eliminate all the other people in his descendancy that don't need temple work done. So all the ones that are completely ready, for all the ones that are already done, it'll just automatically take those out. Now, here we see several different icons that you may not be familiar with. At the top here, we have a little temple with a little circle. When you click on that, it'll pop into all the the names that need temple work done. If it has a little circle, what that means is one of these names, not necessarily all of them, but one of these names has already been shared with the temple. For me, I do so much family history work that I do not re-request these names. However, if you're a beginner and you're just looking for some names to take to the temple, these are always great options. It just means that you only have 120 days to complete them. And then if you don't complete them, they'll be returned to the temple and be done at a later time. You can also double check because it will say there'll be a little banner that's dark blue, as you can see here. And it says you may reserve these ordinances, and then you only have 120 days to complete them. If they're a regular ordinance, you have anywhere from 2 to 5 years to complete a name. And you may think, oh, wow, that's a long time. But when sharing temple names, it may be a lot longer before they get done. However, I always share my names with the temple once I get too many. Because when you share them with the temple, the great thing is you can always go and unreserve them. So say you're getting ready to go to the temple in a few weeks, but maybe it'll get done before that. You don't know. So you're going to, or maybe it's even 6 months before you plan on going. Who knows? You turn them into the temple hoping they get done before, but say they don't. And the time comes for you to go to the temple. You can then unreserve those unshare them from the temple and do them yourself anyways. So that's why I personally like to share them with the temple. Okay, so here it'll also tell you what type of ordinances need to be done. So B stands for baptism, C for confirmation, I for initiatory, E for endowment, SS for sealing to spouse, and SP for sealing to parent. That'll just help you know which records you want to reserve. I always reserve ones that haven't been shared with the temple, just because the temple does need permission to share those, to do those ordinances. So if you find them and they don't have this little, I can't zoom in, but this little clock icon in the top, I suggest you always reserve them, just because then even if you unreserve them later or share them with the temple at least has permission to do them later down the line, and they'll eventually get done, which is extremely important as well. Okay, so we're going to slide down here. Here next to this temple icon, we see a blue person icon that almost looks like a passport. When you click on that, that just means that this person has a record with their possible name on it. This is a little more advanced, and I'll do a later video on that, but for now we're going to just ignore that. Okay, now we have Olivia J. Lawson, and she has a yellow temple. When we click into it, it might say a variety of different things. This specific one says that they have no birthplace, date, or anything like that. And that's what we need to be able to do their records. We're going to go ahead and skip that for now for this first video. Okay, now we're going to slide down to Hattie Bird Talley. Now she has a temple icon, but it doesn't have a little circle. That means the temple has never found this name. Sometimes it's a typo, like in this case. All of these have already been found by the temple, but I'm going to keep going until I find one that hasn't. Okay, all of those have as well. Let's keep looking. Okay, well, this is a good place to stop anyways. So, Willie Adele Davis has possible duplicates. This just means there's another person with their similar name that might exist. For now, I'm going to skip it, but I will make a later video on that. Okay, let's see. I want to find one that hasn't been done yet. Okay, so here's a really good example. So it does have the banner, and one of the ordinances does have a clock on it. That means just for the initiatory of this specific ordinance has already been shared with the temple. However, the sealing to parent has not. Unfortunately, as of right now, you have to request all of the names or none of the names. But in cases like this, I always request it. So we're going to go to the continue button. Okay, so this is just a basic information screen. I suggest you read it the first time. It basically just says who you can and cannot do names for. Just to go over it very briefly, you can do names for anyone that is your direct ancestor or a line ancestor. So that means descendants of your ancestors which basically means everyone because we're all related to Adam, right? And all of his descendants. But it's more of a legal document just so that the church is not liable. And so that, nobody gets mad that you did some work for your ancestors. And you also can't do it for famous people. So anyone that's famous, you're not supposed to do their work for a variety of reasons. It can just bring unnecessary exposure to the church, and we just don't want that. Their work will eventually get done. And then also Jewish Holocaust victims, unless you're a direct descendant or immediate family member, or you have the permission of said family member, or people who were born in the last 110 years. Okay, awesome. So once you've read this the first time, I suggest you just hit I have read and will comply with the church temple ordinancy policy. And then you hit request the family names. Then I'm going to show you where these family names are going. So down here at the bottom, you see a tasks icon, temple icon, recents icon, and more icon. Again, they might be in slightly different places depending on what type of phone you have. Temple icon is where all temple names will be. Okay, under my reservations, these are where all you listed most recent to least recent of the temple names you have requested. So now here's that Joseph Tolivar I don't even know how to say that. His name has already been shared with the temple. That doesn't matter necessarily, especially as a beginner. You can still do his name, but I do so much family names and family history work that there's no way I could get to them all. And if any of you guys have a hard time following this video, please always reach out. I'm always willing to answer questions. Okay, so now here is his sealing to parent. I'm going to go through and show you how to print off this name. So you can either unreserve, take to the temple, or share. So if you're wanting to, even if you are wanting to share a name, I actually still suggest you hit the take to temple icon, and I'll explain why. When you click on that, it'll show you the ordinances you can take to the temple. However, his endowment hasn't been done, so we actually have to print off both and able to do in order to do either, which is just fine. And then we're going to hit continue. Oh, I don't know why that's showing up. So we're just going to, I'm not exactly sure. I think that was a glitch. Okay. So you can schedule a temple appointment. This will take you directly to the church's site where you can request a temple appointment. You can view cards or save to photos. Our temple does not print off barcodes. Lots of temples, if you show them this barcode, they'll actually print off the names for you. Our temple at Vernal does not do that. For those of you who have access to other temples, you'd have to check. So saving to photos, that also just saves this QR code, which won't do you any good if you're going to the Vernal temple. So you'll have to print them off yourself. So you just hit view cards. Wait for it to load. Awesome. So here is his temple card. So it'll show you the date of his previous ordinances, and you will have to do his endowment before you can do his sealing to parent. And then I suggest doing 3 at a time just to save paper, because 3 names can fit per sheet, but that's just a personal preference. Up in the top, and I suggest you do this process as well to share it, and I'll show you why again. Hit the top, and then it's going to say share. So even when you're printing it off, you're going to hit share. Perfect. Okay, so now down here, there's a print icon if your phone is already connected to your printer, or you have a variety of options. You can send it to anyone you've recently contacted, or you can message, airdrop, email, or any of these other options to get the name. I usually email it to myself due to the fact that I'm not connected to I don't have a wireless printer. So then you would just do it that way. And that's the basics of how to use family history. I'm going to make further videos if they're wanted. If you ever have specific questions, please reach out to me, and I hope you learn to love doing family history as much as me.